This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
One final slate of regular season games coming up in the NFL with week number 18 just around the corner and some big games coming up. We're going to break those down with Ryan Williams, who is back with us for today to break down his favorite bets across week 18 at FanDuel Sportsbook. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here once again by Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at Ryan Alexander_W. Ryan has been out for the past couple weeks because, Ryan, you and your wife had a baby. So first of all, congratulations. That's fantastic. How you doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing all right. You know, we pushed the time back of the recording for me and the new dad life to get some rest. So I was appreciative of you doing that, Jim. It's been great though. I mean, there's no words that can be described. I'm trying to think back of all the people who, you know, give advice, but they say Don't take people's advice because you got to figure it out for yourself. And you know, it is surreal because you just think about how your life changes instantly. And it does. Like you think about them all the time. Everything you do is about them. Like my wife and I, we literally have just been the sole focus of them. And I just can't imagine life before the child. I can only imagine that it gets, you know, they start to become fleeting memories the more the kid gets older. So we've just been, you know, hanging out at home. I luckily have had the opportunity to be home with my wife. So that's been great. We've been tag teaming it and just, you know, it's every day is an adventure. So we're just going forward from here, man.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy for both of you. That is fantastic. I saw pictures of your son on Christmas. He looked great. Just really cute pictures. So, I mean, if we get to still talk to you, but also get like baby content on Twitter, you know, I feel like everybody kind of wins. Obviously, I want you to get sleep and stuff like that, but you know, I feel like there are no losers in the situation at all.
Absolutely not. No, and he only has, you know, the option to represent Chicago sports teams here in the state of Wisconsin. So we've already got him set up with that, and it's been fun to see all the gifts and stuff he's been getting around this time, and knowing that his birthday is 3 days before Christmas, it will probably even only get that fact as we get it.
So you'll have to next year get him a Justin Fields jersey as the Bears lock up their postseason berth for 2023. You know, you can buy that now. I don't know if you can plan for how big he'll be by then, but you can plan ahead. Have the Fields jersey already locked down for next Christmas. Yeah,
we actually have a 12-month onesie for the kid that his great aunt and uncle brought over to, you know, represent Fields next year. So a lot of fun things happening there. I mean, you know, the Bears, we'll see what they could be playing for a real high draft pick here, and maybe they try and parlay that into something big. Who knows? But yeah, it would be exciting to see him get some help and have my son be able to wear that with pride next year.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to you. Congratulations to your wife as well. I'm very happy for both of you and excited to have you just, you know, living your best lives, and happy to have you selfishly back on the air as well. We're going to break down week 18 and dig into those lines here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. We have our NCAA championship preview up with Ed Feng breaking down TCU versus Georgia. We talked about Ed's thoughts on the spread in that game. There's been some movement there. We talked about total, player props, and much more. Find that by searching for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Looking to get more out of the NFL this season? Well, now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to touchdown scores to yardage. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in free bets when you join FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. Refund issued is non-withdrawable free bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WIN-IT. In Kansas and Wyoming, 1-800-522-4700 or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Or in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Now, Ryan, before we talk about the big games for Week 18, I want to talk about some of the lesser games. We got some teams locked into their seats, which means they do have something to play for next week, but not this week. And likely going to rest starters. That's the Bucks, the Giants, potentially the Chargers as well in the afternoon window on Sunday. And when I put backups in for the Giants and the Bucks, my numbers still show value in betting them. The Bucks are currently, I believe it's +4 right now, +4.5 against Atlanta. And then the Giants are +14, 2 touchdown underdogs against the Eagles. So even when I put in backups to those teams, I'm seeing value. So what would you do in my situation where you have value on the Bucks and Giants, but you're kind of wondering if you might be under accounting for the backups being in here? How would you handle a spot like that if you were in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it is a slippery slope, right? And that's what we love about Week 18 as it's presented itself. And even more so, I feel like this year, just with all the scenarios that are going on with these teams. But I think you look at it from a historical approach, you look at it from what the slate is giving you. And so for these two teams, for example, let's break them down. So the Bucks really, they handled business last week, was the Brady Mike Evans week, and we know what all that meant for them, and they've locked it up. But they had been reeling leading up to this point. And Brady's come out and said that they need to play in this game. Todd Bowles has come out and said that the starters need to play in this game. And I don't expect that they'll play the full game. Right. But we've seen historically, like with Brady with the Patriots in these type of situations, that he wants to go out there and still play. So you could get them for a half, and a half might be enough to make an impact. Where things stand, especially the way that they were firing on cylinders on offense last week. I would imagine, Brady wants to go out there and get multiple scores in this game. So that really is the one that makes me worry about taking an underdog in this situation when, the team who's favored is actually still playing for getting into the playoffs. Now with the Eagles and Giants situation, you have a team where you have a situation where the Giants really don't need to play in this game, like at all. If they end up winning this game, I think the likelihood of them getting the Eagles again in the playoffs is very high. So depending on how things work out. So that's where things become interesting. And on the Eagles side of things, they need to win this game to lock up the number 1 seed. So, 14 points, we talk about that being a lot, but we've seen this Eagles team go out and throttle teams before, especially with Jalen Hurts being back. You got to like the chances of them trying to, make some noise here as they take on a division rival. So this is where it gets fun and interesting, Jim, because there's so many scenarios and caveats and things that you pay attention to, and who's playing in the noon slot, who's playing in the 325. I know we'll talk about it later with the Lions, but that whole thing is just so interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Bengals and Bills on the slate. KC is playing on Saturday. There's just so many different scenarios, and like the biggest thing that I think is important to tell people is that we don't know, to go into these games and think that, oh, we know exactly how this is going to play out. Oh, these starters are going to rest. Like outside of the Texans and the Bears, who really are playing for a high draft pick. And we know Lovie Smith has the propensity to do everything that he can to tank. Like that game's kind of ugly, Texans and Colts. So you want to take, but that's like the least bet on game right now. Like if we just look at the scenarios, because nobody wants to pick that. Everybody wants to pick these high profile matchups, but there's so many things that can go awry. So I tend to err on the side of caution with people, just to say that to take chances on some of these things that are outliers is fun to do in this week, because there are so many scenarios where people are going to feel pretty confident that they think they know what will happen. And it is the NFL any given Sunday, right? And things could happen. So that's what makes it a fun week for me to be betting on things.
Yeah, it's fascinating for sure across the board. I want to go back to the Bucks here quickly because you mentioned the likelihood that the starters start but then don't finish, and the full game spread I think is accounting for. I think it's saying that they're going to play the entire game, the backups, because Atlanta's not that great. So a 4.5 point spread to me implies they think the starters are not going to play at all. The first half spread is plus 2.5 on Tampa Bay. Maybe you could take the kind of logic you were talking about where you think, okay, Brady starts the game, might not finish. And I think that's accurate because they've already said, it's kind of like the OJ Simpson thing. Like, if I did it, if we were to sit the starters, we would go Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask. Hypothetically, like, sure, you haven't put any thought into this. Okay, buddy. Fair. But my numbers have Gabbert in for the entire game. So I could be maybe overselling them because maybe Trask is a downgrade from Gabbert. I don't know. But I think the plus 2.5 first half might be the proper way to handle that based on, agreeing with what you were saying.
Great.
But I still think overall there's value in the Bucks. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to say no. And with the Giants, like, I agree with you. Like, the Eagles have a lot of motivation to win this game. My respect for Tyrod Taylor is what's giving me like some interest still in them. But I think that I'd agree with your read that the Eagles just kind of have too much motivation to really have a lot of interest there. But the Bucks one to me does grab my attention for sure. Let's dig into a game where motivation is not questioned at all. That is the Titans at the Jaguars right now. The Jags are 6-point favorites at FanDuel Sportsbook. Total is 39.5. And the Titans starting Josh Dobbs in this game over Malik Willis. And I think that makes sense. Willis struggled, couldn't really run their typical offense with him. Dobbs, they were willing to throw with him, which he wasn't great in that Thursday game last week, but they were willing to throw, which is important. So how does the Dobbs situation alter your view of the Titans versus Jags here with the spread at 6 points?
It doesn't alter my view. Let's see. What am I trying to say here? I mean, so the biggest thing here is that what's Derrick Henry doing? Like, is Derrick Henry going out there and playing? Because that's where the Tennessee Titans thing rides on. I think it was interesting to see how the team rallied behind Dobbs last week. Like, you could tell that the Titans' energy was just a lot different than in Malik Willis games. And Dobbs hasn't really looked that great, or had a chance to, I guess, when he was with Pittsburgh. But he went out there, against the Dallas defense and was able to hold his own accordingly. And now we have a Jaguars team that is at home, but they've never been in this position before where they're playing, for playoff lives, especially under this young regime. Doug Peterson's going to coach them up, but we got Mike Vrabel on the other side, and Mike Vrabel as an underdog, like, that's what we're going to take advantage of all the time. And you probably can hear my son in the background. I think he tends to agree with me that, we love getting Tennessee Titans when they are in an underdog situation and actually playing for something here too. I mean, they got a lot of pride on the table, and this is a division that they've been able to have handedly over the course of time in the AFC South. So I still like the Jaguars team up for a game of this magnitude, but points is a lot to me for a Mike Vrabel coach team. So I'm just going to take the points with Tennessee, granted that Derrick Henry is fully healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, he was full in practice Tuesday. So he should be fully good to go. It seems like they were kind of wink, wink, nod, nod, or when they sat him last week. It seems like they were like, okay, we're going to rest this guy for next week, which makes sense. And that essentially means that the key members in the Titans, not just Henry, but also every key player on their defense, like Jeffrey Simmons has had an ankle injury all year, and he was able to rest up last week. That should matter quite a bit, especially because the Titans were super, super banged up the week before that game. So they are rested. That's a good thing. Mike Vrabel, tremendous coach. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that is concerning for me because I like the Jags a lot in this game. And I have bet the Jags -6. But those factors are legitimately concerning because I do respect Mike Vrabel a lot. But my numbers have been high in the Jags all year. I look back at, I can like check and see in which games my numbers have shown value on them. And it's been pretty often that the numbers have been high in the Jags. But the reason I'm reassured in that, because I can say, okay, your numbers are too high on the Jags. You should pedal back a bit, maybe adjust things to make that better. But in the games where my numbers have shown value on the Jags money line, which they do again this week, it's been 9 separate games. The Jags are 8-1 straight up in those games, and they've been underdogs in all but 2 of them. Well, they closed as being underdogs in all but one of them, but that was the Jets game where there was weird money on the Jets late. So I feel like the model actually does a pretty good read on this Jags team. So I actually am okay laying the 6 here, as concerning as that is, given, the factors you mentioned that I agree with Vrabel, with the defense being healthy, with Henry being healthy. So I don't feel great about it, but I do like the Jags here. My numbers also show value on the over at 39.5. I've not taken that yet because I don't have as much faith in my totals model as I do in other stuff, but that number does seem a little bit low for me as well.
Yeah, and this is a fun one too for us, Jim, because we had been talking about this like since the summer. I remember, talking about the Jaguars win the division at FanFest here in Chicago. I can't say here in Chicago anymore, but yes, in Chicago. This is one of those ones where, like, I think from just an overall fan standpoint, like, this is going to be a great one to kind of watch and pay attention to. And, I know from a DFS standpoint, this is going to be a fun one as well to get after. But yeah, I mean, this is really going to show a lot from what the Jaguars have on the other side of things. And then, knowing what they did a couple of weeks ago to this team as well, where they were able to just throttle them in Tennessee, and now they're at home, they got to, hold their own to be able to make the playoffs. So we'll see if they can do that.
Yeah, I would love to see Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Herbert in the first round. So pulling for the Jags from that perspective too, but we'll see how things play out here. Now, you mentioned the Jags divisional odds. We talked about that both at FanFest and here on Covering the Spread at one point. We talked about, taking the Jags to win the AFC South. We also talked Bengals to win the AFC North. Now, that may be locked up by the time we get this kickoff between the Ravens and the Bengals. Bengals 7-point favorites. Total is 41.5. It would be locked up if they decide not to play the remainder of that Bills-Bengals game, because that would make it where the Bengals are up 1.5 games on the Ravens right now, and they couldn't make that up. So if they decide not to play that game, the Bengals will clinch the AFC North. But still a lot on the line, because the 2 seed in the AFC, I think, is very valuable. If we assume the Chiefs win on Saturday night, the Bengals, what I believe, still have a shot at the 2 seed. I miscalculated that this morning, so my bad. But it does seem like they'd have a chance at the 2 seed, and the 2 seed means you are at home for the second game, and you're avoiding playing against either Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert in the first round. So there's a lot of incentive to get that 2 seed in the AFC. So I think that they will push in this game. Doesn't seem like we're going to see Lamar Jackson here, though. So can Tyler Huntley keep this game close and cover almost a touchdown spread against the Bengals?
Jim, this is a tough one for me, because Tyler Huntley, I don't, compared to what we saw from him last year, and maybe it was just because he was that spark that we hadn't seen before, but it seemed like that, the system seemed in place to where, like, Tyler Huntley could come in and fill in for Lamar Jackson. It'd be no problem. That has not been the case this year. They have not been able to get things going. Like, I mean, Hollywood Brown, I'm not going to equate him to being, the offensive savior that they would need, but it's clear that they are missing weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Granted that J.K. Dobbins has come back off an injury and looked fantastic, but Tyler Huntley just is not in rhythm with the pass catchers at all. And this is a Bengals defense that is not one that you want to be, trying to test the waters against. Like, they are going to come out here willing to fire. I do like the Bengals side of things, just as where things stand at this point in time, with everything that has transpired over the past couple of days. I think that a lot of people, might try and talk themselves into a narrative where the Ravens have, a shot here. But if the Bengals are coming in here playing for something like, I'm taking the Bengals 10 times out of 10, they just have everything going for them. There's still some injuries that the Ravens are dealing with on defense as well. So it just makes it tough to really buy into what the Ravens are doing at this point.
Yeah, my numbers agree with you because I had the Bengals favored by 10.4 in one model and 8.97 in the other, if I assume that there's no Lamar Jackson here. And I agree with that. So I think the Bengals are the right side here. The reason I've not taken them yet is because I worry that if the Bills get up on the Patriots, we could see the Bengals rest guys, because if the Bills win, the Bengals can't get the 2 seed. That's the only situation in which I worry about it. So I think that they are the right side. And I think that the 7 is appropriate and probably a little bit light, if I'm being fully honest. But there is a scenario where if the Bills pull ahead from the Patriots, we could see the Bengals pull back on things a bit. Now, I don't think that'll happen. I think the Patriots can keep things close enough to where the Bengals will push for all 4 quarters, but that is at least a little bit in my mind where it could be a bit of a concern. But I agree with you where this Bengals offense is shredding right now. Ever since they changed up their scheme back in week 5, like they've been phenomenal. I mean, they struggled in week 5 against this very same Ravens team with this current scheme. But since then, unreal stuff, even especially once they've had Jamar Chase healthy and stuff like that. So I think the Bengals are the right way to go here. I've not bet that personally, but I do think there is value in the Bengals -7 in this game against the Ravens. Let's finish things up in your neck of the woods now and talk about the Lions at the Packers. Packers are 4.5-point favorites. Total is 49.5, and Packers know they need a win to get in. Now, the Lions need help because the Seahawks game happens before this. That is a 4:25 p.m. Eastern kick, 3:25 p.m. Central, which means it'll probably end about 45 minutes or so before kickoff on Sunday night. Now, that could eliminate the Lions. But does that worry you at all if you're interested in backing the Lions in this game, or are you on the Packers regardless?
No, it actually, and I can say this with confidence because I am here in Wisconsin and get to listen to sports radio and all the fans that talk about this game. They do not want the Lions coming into Lambeau in a situation where it seemingly feels like they have nothing to play for, and the public perception will be that the Packers will roll. They want everybody to feel like the Lions still have a chance. And so if Seattle loses, then all the pressure's on Detroit to come into Lambeau and really win this game so that they can get in. I think the fear for Green Bay is that you get a Lions team who everybody's watching this 325 thing with Seattle. They're at home against the Rams. Now, the Rams have actually done pretty decently. McVay against Pete Carroll, I think it's 5-1 in the past 6 games or something like that. So against the spread, it's an interesting matchup. But I digress, because if Seattle goes in there and holds face, now the Lions can come in and they can kind of they can play loose. Like there's no pressure on Jared Goff there. Like we know his road home splits are not great. So I think all the pressure is on Detroit if Seattle is able to handle business and win that game. It becomes a lot more fun if Seattle loses. Or if Seattle wins. If Seattle wins and Detroit needs to, they still they don't have to play for anything, but they are playing for, not having the Packers be in the playoffs. And they are playing for, the Dan Campbell pride. That we saw in Hard Knocks. And this is not a dude that I think we can expect to go out there and be sitting players just because they don't have a chance to get into the playoffs. Like they're trying to build something going into next year. Where, if people love them in the industry coming into this year. Like if they go out there and they can handle business or at least make it a competitive game, I can't imagine what it's going to be like for Detroit, for Detroit Bucks when we head into 2023 season. So, all that being said, this is one where I don't want to jump the gun here because this could really be interesting to take if Seattle wins the game. Like if Seattle wins the game, this line starts changing, and then you take the Packers even at a more favorable spot here, and more so than 4.5. And now we could be cooking with gas there when everybody's trying to hammer in on the Packers because how can they lose at home to the Detroit Lions who have nothing to really play for? So I do like the spot. I also am interested in taking the under in this game. It's 49.5, and that kind of seems like a lot based on all the emotions that could be going into this game as well. That's one that I'd be willing to take sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's going to be a wait and see approach for me with the Lions here, because there are interesting things that can happen after the 325 slot.
You said under 49.5, correct?
Under 49.5.
Yeah, my numbers show the same thing as you. And I was concerned about that because the Lions defense stinks. And the Packers, they lit it up last week, but they scored twice on either defensive or special teams touchdowns. They hate snapping the ball before there are like 0.5 seconds left on the play clock. Like they run that thing down all the way, that's a big part of why my numbers actually have the total for this game at like 46, I think. It's a lot lower than where it's currently at. So I agree with you. The under is very in play for this game. And I also want to, echo what you said with regards to everything with the motivation. I don't think the Lions are going to pack it in if they can't make the playoffs in this game. Because of the Dan Campbell stuff. This is their playoff game. Yeah, if the Seahawks lose, this is their playoff game, or the Seahawks
Right.
win, this is their playoff game. And I think that Dan Campbell will pitch it that way. They're not going to know until right before kickoff if they have a shot to advance or not, which means they're going to play their starters. We know that for sure. I feel like 4.5 is a lot. And I think the thought process you're saying is correct, where you hold off to bet this one until after the Seahawks game, under the assumption it gets to, I don't think it gets to a touchdown, but it might get to like 6.5 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the reason why I'm willing to take it now is there's a chance that Seattle does not win. That's a possibility. And if that were to happen, we'd probably see moving the other way. So I'm okay locking it in now and kind of, assuming the markets are properly counting the odds that Seattle wins this game, because I think we're over accounting for motivation in this spot. So I want the Lions plus 4.5, and I'm okay taking that now because there is a shot that the Seahawks win, and because I think the books are kind of already assuming the Lions have nothing to play for in this game. So it'll probably move, like you said, but it might not move too much. So I'm going to take the Lions right now, plus 4.5. I got to be honest. One of my models said the Lions should be favored in this game, which seems aggressive. Seems a little aggressive.
That's a little aggressive, but being here and seeing what's transpired over the course of time. I mean, this team was dead to rights at 4-8. It's an incredible story. However you feel about the Packers or Aaron Rodgers or whatever, everything like that, what they've been able to accomplish in the short period of time, knowing that their backs against the wall and they had no room for error at all, and to be able to be in the spot at home, no less, is really incredible. But the way this Lions team is playing, I mean, and I get it. The first game was at Detroit, but that game, I'm telling you that defense was hungry to get after that guy. And, Aaron Jones has been a little bit banged up. Christian Watson is banged up. If it comes down to Jared Goff, Jared Goff needs to be able to be trusted here on the road to be able to handle business. And if they can get, a Monra going, Kirk Cousins wasn't able to do that with Justin Jefferson last week, but, they got weapons. DJ Chark, the running backs look great. This is a Jamal Williams returns to Lambeau type of narrative situation you got going on here. The Lions are being ruled out and dead to rights just off of the fact that they are playing in Lambeau. If this was a neutral site, I think we would be treating this a little bit differently. And I think that there's still some merit to think that they're not just going to roll over and be dead just because the Packers, embarrassed the Vikings last week.
Yeah.
This is a totally different team that we're accustomed to betting on over the years. And so I do think that this game is going to be interesting, and I'm actually happy that it did get flexed, as opposed to, people feeling like Seattle being at a 325 window puts at a disadvantage. But I still think that there's a lot of fun that can be had even with Seattle winning that game. I said, so I think that this was the right move to flex this game. It's going to be fun to have it on primetime. The
only bummer of this is that I like all three of these teams. How can you root against Geno Smith? I can't. How can you root against Dan Campbell? I can't. The Packers, super fun story with how dead they were and now they're coming back. I wish all three could make it. So if we could bump, nudge the Bucks or someone else out of the playoffs, I'd prefer that. But honestly, it's been fun. I'm excited, like you said, for this game. No matter what happens with the Seattle game, I think it's going to be a delight. But we'll see how things go on Sunday night up in Lambeau. Okay. Where else you see in value across week 18, Ryan?
Oh, let's pull up the card here. The one game that I've been looking at is the Denver and Chargers game. Now, I think I might have alluded to on a previous pod with you that I might be done betting the Broncos. I might be back in on them, minus 2.5 here. Depending on what's going on with the Chargers and what they do or do not have to play for. This is a team where, especially knowing that they're going into the playoffs for the first time under the Herbert regime, if they really don't need to play for anything here, they could just be you know what, we don't need to exert ourselves at Mile High. We can just, do what we need to do and let it be what it is. And the Denver Broncos, for at least with the coaching change, seems like they're playing for pride at least compared to how they were able to hold up things last week against Kansas City. So 2.5 there is a favorable number for me. Also elsewhere, where was I pulling at here? The Carolina Panthers Saints game. Carolina getting 3.5. I think that's interesting as well. I'm keen on that. And it's been tough for me to bet the Raiders at all this year with everything that's been going on with them. But the Chiefs getting 7 or more points, like they've struggled to cover these numbers historically, and especially when we're talking about 9.5. I mean, how many times have we sat on this pod and talking about the Chiefs being favored by 10 or more points, and they've been in letdown situations. It's a Raiders game at home. You love what we saw from Jarrett Stidham last week, a disciple of the McDaniels offense from the New England days, and so getting 9.5 points there is an interesting feat as they try and play for what they're building on for the future. Maybe that's not with Stidham necessarily, but they still have a lot of pieces there that are buying in. The defense has been somewhat better comparatively as what we know the Raiders defense as, and this Chiefs team just has mailed it in on situations like this when they're favored by so much, and especially on the road here. So I'm willing to look at the Raiders 9.5.
Yeah. Nate Tice of The Athletic has described the Chiefs as playing with their food at times when they're like, they know they're going to win. So they kind of dick around a little bit. That's definitely happened before. The one I wanted to ask you about where I'm showing value elsewhere is actually in the Dolphins game. Yeah. I have Skylar Thompson as starting in my model. And even when I have Skylar Thompson starting this game, I have the Dolphins favored by 1.87 over the Jets. I kind of just think that I think our opinion of Mike White is a bit too inflated. That's kind of what it comes down to here. And Mike McDaniel is still, I think, a very smart coach. I think that he can coach up this team and position themselves well for the situation. Obviously, last week, they didn't play great against New England, but they had a defensive touchdown they let up. They had a shot to win that game. I know that at the end they didn't. They had that late garbage touchdown, but stuff like that. But I think they were at least competitive in that game, which was encouraging to me, given that Bridgewater left and Thompson was still something. So the Dolphins money line right now is even money at FanDuel Sportsbook. If I have the Dolphins favored, I am okay taking that because they have motivation. The Jets do not. It seems like this is kind of being accounted for as if the Jets are the team that actually have motivation. So if I'm getting a money line value on a team where I've already accounted for the backup being in, and they have motivation while the opponent does not, I feel like I should take that. So I like the Dolphins even money. Any thoughts for you on that one?
Yeah, this one's it's been a stay away from me just because the Skylar Thompson thing.
Because you're smart, Ryan. You're the intelligent one here. You knew better than to bet on the Jets and Dolphins in Week 18 with a backup quarterback on both, third string quarterback on both sides. Third
string, yeah. If it was Teddy B, I think I could talk myself.
It'd be a revenge game. Yeah.
Teddy covers, right? So that would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, the way that this Jets defense plays, I mean, they could make it a long day for Skylar Thompson. I know we're looking at the Patriots being last week and how, stout their defense has been and what they've been able to accomplish, but they weren't really prepared to play Skylar Thompson. And now we have, scouting report, and the Jets have been preparing for that. So that's what worries me from the Miami side. Now it is still interesting because, we do have keen pieces on the offensive side for Miami. The running backs have looked great as of late. You still got Hill, you still got Waddle. So they can put up a splash play against anybody if Skylar Thompson can get them the ball. But I do think that this Jets D is still kind of, there and can make life miserable. So it's that from that standpoint, it's just been a stay away for me.
Yeah, I don't enjoy betting against Jets defense. That's it's very fair for sure. But we'll see how things play out in week number 18. That's all we got here for this week on covering the spread for the full NFL preview. But we're back once again tomorrow. Tom Vecchio will swing by, break down his favorite player props across week 18. Going to be a dicey one there for sure with all the stuff up in the air. If we thought it was dicey for betting sides and totals, player props going to be dicey too as well. That'll be up on the Covering the Spread podcast feed tomorrow and over on the FanDuel YouTube page. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you prefer to consume your content. Big thank you to Ryan Williams. Ryan, it's great to have you back here on the show. Have fun. Good luck with you with trying to make your son be not nocturnal, and looking forward to talking to you again next week.
Yeah, I look forward to it. And shout out to Tom Vecchio holding it down. It was great to be able to hear him. I mean, he waxed poetic, last week. So hopefully people are, getting after his action, because Tom is, he's A1. He's all good in my book, and he was holding it down. So appreciate him. But yeah, thanks for the shout out, Jim. Can't wait to get the little guy in a FanDuel onesie here soon, and maybe have him make a guest appearance. Probably next year, we'll see.
I need his thoughts on the Lions game. So if you, when he's up, ask him and let me know, and just relay that to me. We can do that privately.
Jim's
can't let the good
line.
info out. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Check out Ryan on Twitter at @RyanAlexander_W. I'm on Twitter at JimSannes, JIMSANNES. We are back with you once again tomorrow, breaking down props for Week 18. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.